I'm just gonna cut to the chase here. How many times have you seen a Grandmaster losing in under 10 moves? Now how about the Super Grandmaster? Because in this video, I'll be going over two unique games where some of the world's best chess players got absolutely smoked in under 10 moves. Like, that's just crazy. Imagine devoting your whole life to a game and losing in such a fashion. Like, it's just terrible. But I don't mean this in a bad way. Like, I just want to show you these guys are human after all, and so that we can improve from their mistakes. Now, the first game was played by Shakhriyar Mamedyarov, one of the world's strongest player, and chess legend Garry Kasparov. Come on, everyone knows Gary. He's one of the candidates for greatest chess player of all time. However, that didn't stop him from losing this game in under 10 moves. I mean, sure, this game was actually a blitz game played in 2021, but it was a series event. It was the Grand Chess Tour played in Croatia. And I mean, Gary is able to calculate lines in seconds. That would take us mere mortals minutes or even hours. So that's really no excuse. Now the game started with d4, Gary replies with d5, and Shaq goes for c4, and we have the Queen's Gambit on the board. Well, nowadays, usually people always play something like e6, the Queen's Gambit decline, or c6, the swell defense. But Gary is an old-fashioned guy, and he goes straight into the Gambit. He accepts it, and plays he takes on c4. Now, this is a completely normal opening, it's completely playable, he just has to be a bit careful, because now Shaq plays the standard e3. Now that he's deflected this pawn from the center, he wants to get it back, and he opens his bishop diagonal. However, now, since there's no knight on f3, Gary uses this and he plays e5, because this pawn can't really be taken. Otherwise, after queen takes queen, king takes queen, these doubled pawns in the center and the fact that white can't castle his king kind of favor Gary. So he would have a completely normal game here, and he'd have a small advantage here. So Shaq doesn't go into this, and now he plays knight f3, which is kind of a tricky move because he isn't recollecting his pawn. He's delaying it so that he can develop his pieces as soon as possible. Now Gary is completely fine with this. He just uses this opportunity to take more pawns. Fine. You gift him a pawn, he takes the pawn. We have he takes on d4. Now Shaq takes this pawn, but Gary here needs to be very careful because Shaq has already two very nicely developed pieces. He's almost getting castled, and meanwhile Gary's pieces are just AFK in the back rank. So he has to be very mindful of what he does here. And basically the only way to continue here is to go something like bishop b4 and develop your pieces as soon as possible. Actually, develop this bishop with a tempo, because after something like bishop d2, he would be able to exchange the bishops, queen takes, and after knight f6, just castle his king and enjoy a perfectly normal game. However, back here, he kind of rushed, and instead of bishop b4, he played a move that will probably haunt him for the rest of his life. Here he played knight f6. And the problem is that now there's this queen to b3, and black can't castle because his bishop is just not developed. So how can he develop this extremely weak f7 square without losing material? He can't really go bishop e6 because the white queen is just getting in. So he goes queen to e7, defending this point. However, now he's blocking this bishop. Like, this position is so ugly. Like, he doesn't have any development. He's just falling behind. And turns out there's a move here that just forces basically the game to end almost. If you want, feel free to pause the video. And again, there's only one move, so don't let Garry Kasparov escape your claws. Okay, so hope you found it. And if you thought there was something happening on f7, well, it is, just not yet. Because if white goes something like knight e5, just really intensifying the pressure here, turns out the game is equal again, because black was threatening queen to b4, just checking the white king and exchanging queens. So white's attack is just gone, and so is his advantage. So back here, white has to be a little bit more creative, and in this position, he can just castle. And after castles, there's like a +3 advantage for white, and the game, for a super GM level, is just over. So in this position, Garry Kasparov, believe it or not, resigned, and I'm gonna convince you why. So in this position, white has a lot of threats. He is threatening, first of all, to take this pawn, open the e-file, and win the black queen, right? The queen would just be pinned to the king. Also, he's threatening now to play knight g5 and really just destroy the black camp. Now there's no queen to b4 to trade the queens, so white is just doing extremely well. For example, if he tries just playing a normal developing move, say knight to c6, white can just play e takes on d4, like I said, opening the file. And if black tries closing it, just queen takes on b7, the bishop can't move from here because this pawn on b7 is extremely important. Now the rook is attacked, the knight is attacked, and black is just lost. So Gary saved all of this, and yeah, after castles, it was in this position that legendary chess player Gary Kasparov resigned in the 7th move. Like, it's just crazy. But okay, this brings us to the next game, where with the white pieces, we have Super Grandmaster Linear Dominguez, rated almost 2750, and with the black pieces, well, we don't have a Super GM, but we have a strong Grandmaster nonetheless, Elshan Moradiabadi, rated almost 2550. Now the game started with e4, and after e5, knight f3, and knight f6, these guys go into the classical Petrov defense. Now linear continues with knight takes on e5, and let me just interrupt the game. It's not really related, but I'll just present you a trap that for you beginners in this opening will win you a ton of games for sure. Because it did for me. Like when I was about 1000, I won a ton of games here. So you must know this. In this position, if black takes this pawn, you can actually go queen to e2, and it's super easy to mess this up as black, because now you've aligned, your queen with black's king, and if black is careless and just moves his knight, oh, just knight c6, and you just won the black king, right? It's check from your queen. So black, even if he blocks with the bishop or the queen, he's just losing his queen nonetheless. So you'll just win a ton of games if you lower rated, so I just wanted to get that out of the way. Now these guys aren't really rated 1000, so instead of knight takes pawn, first we have d6, kicking this knight, and after knight f3, now he takes this pawn on e4. And we have a series of natural moves that are actually, like I said, the classical line. We have d4, d5, bishop to d3, putting some pressure here on these knights. We have bishop to e7, just preparing castling. White here just castles. We have bishop to f5, reinforcing here in the center, also developing this bishop to this nice f5 square. Now white goes for this devious c4, and now black kinda needs to be careful, because this c4 threatens to, undermine this strong pawn on d5. That's holding, black's pieces together here, basically. It's a really nice defender to this knight, so black really doesn't want to lose it. You should play, something like a c6 or just d takes on c4, hitting this bishop. But here, black naively just castles, and he thinks he's continuing development. However, after c takes on d5, queen takes on d5, Linear has another plan, because here he just takes this knight on e4, and even though they were playing a completely normal opening line, like this is the classical Petrov, turns out this very strong American Grandmaster just lost the game in 10 moves, and after bishop takes on d4, he had to resign, believe it or not. But let's take a look at why he resigned, because he may have lost a piece, but he can take it back in 2 different ways. So what's the problem, you ask? Well, the problem is that if black takes with the queen, just rook e1, the queen is hit, and the bishop behind her is gonna fall. And no matter where the queen goes, she cannot go to a square and defend the bishop. The only square she will be able to do so is to h4, but this is convenient to be taken by the knight, so not really an option. Instead, let's take with the bishop, right? Now there's no rook to e1, and all is fine, right? Well, not really, because knight to c3, and now the queen is attacked, the bishop is attacked. If the queen just moves, let's say to f5, you can just take the bishop, and then after the queen retakes, just rook e1, and this bishop back here is falling again. So instead, let's try to be clever, and black maybe takes this knight on f3, because it takes our queen. However, now, white has conveniently knight takes on d5, he can take the queen, because after black takes our own queen, we can take his bishop, we check. That's the key to note here, because the check is extremely important here. This king is hit, the king is forced to move, and now the bishop doesn't have time to run away, and we can take it. And in this position, we just up a queen bishop, and yeah, no matter what black does, back here after bishop takes on e4. Black is just down a piece, and he just lost the game in 10 moves. And I forgot to mention, but this was a classical game. The guys have like 2 hours on their clock, so this must have been quite a painful loss for Mr. Moradiabadi. But yeah, this just goes to show that everyone is human. We're bound to make mistakes from time to time. So just focus on having fun, learning from your mistakes, but don't be too harsh on yourself. And just enjoy the amazing game that chess is. Hope you guys enjoyed and maybe learned a thing or two. And that's it. See you on the next one. Bye.